Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our fourth annual Work Without Limits Executive Summit. I'm so excited to welcome you all here today, and in particular, to welcome you all to what I calculate to be day 155 of the largest ever global experiment in remote work. It's true that the world has changed so much in the last few months. More than half of the US workforce is currently working remotely, which is probably about 10 times the remote employee workforce versus what was happening before the current pandemic. And at Upwork, we have more than 20 years of remote work experience. We have been so privileged to work with companies large and small over the last few months, helping them adapt to this new normal of remote work. Whether it's been working with companies like Bowie Health in Boston, who has been building out a COVID-19 self-diagnostic tool using freelance talent on Upwork, or whether it's been helping large corporations like Microsoft add more freelance talent to their customer support teams to work and support their customers as they navigate this global pandemic. This has truly been an unprecedented last few months. But as I step back and look at what we are seeing across the work landscape, this is so much more than a set of individual companies making individual changes. What we are seeing is truly a seismic shift in how companies across the globe and workers around the world think about their relationship with work and where that work can get done. And consequently, as they reevaluate where work can happen, that is also causing companies and individuals everywhere to reconsider who they can do that work with. And certainly that means including new and different constituencies in workforces from this point forward in very different ways. This is a fundamental shift in how companies can embrace different types of workers, including independent freelance talent, as a strategic asset for companies moving forward. It is true that companies have realized that work is no longer the destination that people go to on a daily basis. Work is something that actually can come to workers at home and in locations wherever they are for so many types of work. I've been talking to business leaders throughout the last few months, and they have told me some really striking things. Number one, so many have said, innovation is actually up in my company, despite the fact that we're working further and further apart across boundaries that we thought would maybe separate us and cause us to struggle to collaborate. Company leaders have told me that engagement scores are through the roof in so many corporations, and we've seen this even in our own workforce, where employees and team members are leaning in new ways and connecting in different ways as they work together, despite geographic boundaries and the fact that they can't get together face to face the way they did in the past. I think it's not surprising, in fact, that we are seeing these increases in engagement and innovation and collaboration, even at a time when companies and people cannot get together in the traditional ways that they did inside of the workforce. Because truly, so much of what people are learning with these remote collaboration tools and the ways that they are working is about a democratization of work. The ways that they're using Slack and Zoom and Google Hangouts and Microsoft Teams and Upwork and all of these technologies have really been opening their eyes to the ways that they can bring everyone in their workforce into more equal participation, leveling the playing field for access to information, for access to leadership. And for leaders, we're all seeing that we are able to reach the edges of our organizations, to reach our customers in ways that virtually are more possible and more exciting and more equitable than even what we did when we were kind of bounded and more influenced by this idea that we had to do so much face to face. And so with this democratization of work and this participation change, this is opening companies' eyes and individuals' eyes to what else might be possible. It's true that as we think about this, there is so much more possibility in terms of who can participate in a labor force and in a workplace that is global and that is distributed. One of the biggest challenges that companies talked about and struggled with even before the current pandemic was around the access to skills, and the idea that they struggled again and again to find exactly the person they needed to close critical skill gaps in their organizations or to hire quickly enough for key projects because they were constrained by the places where they typically would look to find that talent, or by the idea that to find that talent, they would need to bring those people on site into their organizations to do that work. And so, in a world where remote is suddenly a muscle that companies around the world have, they're realizing that they can use that remote work muscle to close that skill and talent gap and tap into a workforce that potentially didn't seem available to them in the past. And that is a huge change and a huge advantage for companies that had that skill gap challenge in the past. Another huge opportunity for companies today is around diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and how we can use remote work as a tool for unlocking critical goals that we share around a more inclusive workforce. Companies have said to me, wow, I didn't think that I could really solve these inclusion and belonging problems that I had until I realized now I can hire in geographies that previously didn't seem possible for me. Or now I can reach people as being part of my workforce that previously were far beyond the local geographic constraints that my business had. We can also imagine how overall labor market participation can improve in a world where remote work is totally normal and totally possible. Think about people like retirees. Just because I moved to Florida doesn't mean I may not want to still be relevant and participate in some really critical work as part of a project that I can dial into from there. If I'm someone who has got caregiving responsibilities or a disability that may have prevented me from moving to a large city or from commuting a long distance into an office, suddenly with remote work, I am able to participate in the workforce in a way that previously was not available to me. And so with this adaptation towards remote work, suddenly businesses and individuals are able to include a broader set of constituents in our workforces than we ever were before. And that solves so many challenges for businesses. It also solves a lot of challenges that individuals had, because people have for a long time reported an increased desire for freedom, for flexibility in the workplace, and for how and where and when they work. As we've surveyed people who have been adapting to remote work in the recent months, we've seen three big trends in terms of what they love about working remotely. One is they love the reduction in non-essential meetings that have happened. They think people are much more laser focused in a remote work environment towards doing real important work, and they're cutting out some of the noise. Along those same lines, they're seeing fewer in-office distractions. I think one of the fallacies that we've kind of held onto for far too long is this idea that the workplace is a super productive place to get work done. In reality, a lot of the data and a lot of the anecdotal responses we get from people is that the workplace is often one of the least productive places to go to get real work done. And survey responses from workers tells that same story, where they're happy to be at home, often in a much quieter environment, able to get real work done. A third big reporting from individuals at this time has been, thank you for saving me my commute. I was wasting so much time every week commuting into an office just to sit in front of a computer and do work that I could have done anywhere else, including my home. And that is a huge savings that I think people are leaning into and redeploying that time for a much more productive purpose. So we are seeing significant shifts in how people are using the time when they can work remotely, as well as who can participate in a labor market that really embraces remote work in a significant way. And I think it's against this backdrop that it's not surprising that the data shows that more than 73% of hiring managers are planning to continue or increase their usage of freelance talent in this environment to get critical projects done. And this is particularly striking against a backdrop where we see 45% of hiring managers report furloughing or laying off employees. This is a moment where companies are really struggling because they need to get things done, and yet they often have real constraints around budgets, around the commitments they can make to employees about kind of certainty going forward, and yet they have to find a way to move forward with agility and resiliency in a model that works for them. And so today is all about what does that model look like for the organization of today and the future? Because truly, the modern organization needs to embrace agility, and a hybrid workforce as a true competitive advantage. This isn't about managing your business through a pandemic. This is about managing your business through the dynamic environment that exists for every company, regardless of the economy or the pandemic or no pandemic, because business volatility and a dynamic business environment is true for pretty much every business in every market around the world. And so when we talk to leaders, we hear from them consistently three big questions that are perennial top of mind issues that I think agility and a hybrid workforce squarely address. The first big question that we hear from leaders is, how do I create a dynamic talent model that is really flexible the way that my business needs to be flexible in a dynamic environment? What can that look like for me? The second big question we get is, how can I get as much or more done in an environment where my budget is either flat or declining? Because those two things seem to go against each other. And yet here I am faced with the challenge of doing more with as much or less than I've had in the past. The third big question we get is, how do I continue to fill and close that skills gap that often is constraining me from achieving the goals that I have as a business because I can't find the people that I need when I need them to do critical work? And so today is all about how you can address those questions for your organization. Because specifically, we want you to be equipped to address those questions, which are perennial and endemic in any business, in any environment, and can set you apart as a specifically equipped leader in a time when resilience and agility are paramount. And I would argue that there's a whole new paradigm emerging in terms of what distinguishes today's leader and what businesses will look for in today's modern leaders. And I think that is around resilience and agility. If you think of the leadership paradigm of the past, which was largely around the empire builder and this person who could build, giant armies of teams to do amazing things, I think that paradigm is finally seeing its end. The modern leader, the paradigm for that new modern leader, I think is the magician. The magician is the leader who can make things happen seemingly that are impossible. They can marshal resources out of nowhere, spin up teams to do things that seemed unthinkable before, and come up with a plan to execute things in a way that others might think defies belief. And I think the new modern leader is the magician who can operate in a world of constraints and a world of agility and a need to be very adaptive and responsive, and yet continue to drive business outcomes at an uncertain time, but with consistency and a playbook that always works. I recall talking to someone who was a workforce productivity expert a while ago, and they shared a statistic that really stuck with me. That said, Hayden, did you know that 30 to 40% of the time spent on any project inside of an organization is spent purely on marshaling the resources to get the project done? And if you think about that and about how much time we all spend just trying to negotiate for the resources and the headcount and the budget and the alignment and the, will you lend me this team and can I borrow that team to do this project? All of those cycles and all of that time that gets wasted could be put to use by the leader who can instantly put on demand a team ready to go that's fit for purpose to execute on a project and pull forward that execution timeline by 30 to 40% or more. Think about what that can unlock for your company, and think about how much you as a leader can stand out as the person who's capable of doing that. So our mission at Upwork is to create economic opportunities so people have better lives. And we do believe that that mission is part of every single thing we do and every reason why we come into work every day. And when I think about that mission, I think often of one of the freelancers I met with earlier this year who joined me on a virtual meeting from her house in Long Island. And she really left an impression on me when she dialed into that meeting. She said, Hayden, I'm so excited to meet with you today because I'm joining you here from my home in Long Island, which my husband and I call the house that Upwork built. And she proceeded to tell me how she had built that house using the income that she had earned over 10 plus years freelancing on our website, and how that had been a transformational life experience for her and for her family. And I think that often people think of our global pool of incredible talent, and it can feel kind of anonymous and impersonal. And yet, when I think of this talent pool, I want you too to think of these individual stories and these individual people who have committed their careers and their professions and found amazing ways into freelancing as a profession and have incredible stories to share about how they did that. One of the biggest joys and privileges in my job is that I get to meet with freelancers like her and hear her story. And I get to meet with clients who have met people like her through our website, have built long-lasting, powerful relationships, and I get to see their eyes light up as they tell me about the people that they have met through Upwork and built long-lasting work relationships with, and how transformative that has been for them, both professionally and personally. And so for those of you who are joining us today who haven't yet tasted the goodness of what that can be like and how powerful it is to use a global freelancing platform such as Upwork to really transform both the agility and resiliency that you have as an organization, as well as to tap into a pool of incredibly skilled professionals ready to do incredible work for your organization, I just want to say welcome and how excited I am for you to be taking the first steps on that journey today. I want to close by inviting you to join us on this exciting journey, embracing this shift to remote work with the attendant embrace of a different paradigm that includes more people in the workforce and opens up more potential and more opportunities for so many more people in the labor market. I want to invite you to join us on this journey and embrace your role as a magician for your company, as someone who can be transformative in driving change and show people that something that seems impossible is actually possible with the modern tools and technology that we have available to us today. I know that we can make the future of work more inclusive, more exciting, and more gratifying, both for businesses and for employees and freelancers alike. Thank you for being on this journey today. Have an awesome day with us, and welcome to Upwork.